The handcuffs clicked shut, echoing louder than the sirens in the silent, humid air. Officer Harlan Pike thought he had just taken down an arrogant criminal. He thought the uniform in her back seat was a costume. He thought the heavy gold star on her ID was a prop. He was wrong. Dead wrong. The woman he had just slammed against the hood of a 1967 Shelby Mustang wasn't a criminal. She was Lieutenant General Thalia Monroe, the highest-ranking logistics commander in the U.S. Army, and she had been on her way to a classified briefing with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. In what felt like moments, Officer Pike's career wouldn't simply end. It would be incinerated by a single phone call that would shake the Pentagon itself. This is the story of how arrogance met absolute power. The heat in southern Georgia was a physical weight, a wet blanket that smelled of pine needles and asphalt, melting under the midday sun. Lieutenant General Thalia Monroe adjusted the rearview mirror of her pristine cherry-red 1967 Shelby GT 500. She wasn't in uniform. Today she was technically on leave, driving from a family reunion in Savannah back to Fort Stewart, before catching a flight to Washington for a briefing that could shape the budget of the entire Eastern Seaboard's defense grid. She wore a crisp white linen shirt, tailored navy slacks, and oversized sunglasses that hid eyes known in the Pentagon for stripping colonels of their confidence with a single glance. At 52, Thalia moved with lethal grace. She was a black woman who had climbed the ranks when the ladder was greased with prejudice, and she had smashed every glass ceiling they built. She checked her speedometer, 55 and a 55. Precision was a habit, not a choice. Route 9 outside the sleepy town of Oak Creek was notorious. It was a speed trap designed to bleed tourists and soldiers dry, funding the bloated budget of a police department that had more tactical gear than common sense. Thalia saw the cruiser before he saw her. A black Dodge Charger hidden behind a billboard advertising divorce lawyers. As she passed, the engine roared to life. The lights flickered on, blue and red, spinning violently. "Here we go," she whispered, her voice calm. She signaled, slowed down gradually, and pulled onto the gravel shoulder, keeping her hands visible at the top of the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, she watched the officer approach. He was young, perhaps 25, with a high and tight haircut that screamed rejected military applicant. He walked with a swagger that hadn't been earned, his hand resting aggressively on his holster. This was Officer Harlan Pike. He didn't come to the window. He stopped at the rear pillar, a tactical maneuver to keep the driver off balance. Thalia lowered the passenger window, then her own. "License and registration," Pike barked, not bothering with a greeting. "Good afternoon, officer," Thalia said, her voice steady. "May I ask the reason for the stop?" "I said license and registration. Do not make me ask you a third time." Pike's face was flushed, sweat beading under the brim of his hat. He leaned down, peering into the car, his eyes scanning the interior. They lingered on the expensive leather seats, the high-end dashboard, and finally the folded Army service uniform hanging in the back, the 3 silver stars on the shoulder boards clearly visible. "Is that a costume back there?" Pike sneered. Thalia blinked slowly. "That is my uniform." "Officer, step out of the car." "Officer, I am complying with your request for identification. It is in my purse on the passenger seat. I'm going to reach for it now." "I said step out of the car!" Pike shouted, his hand unsnapping the retention strap of his service weapon. "You people always have an excuse. Get out now." Thalia's internal alarm bells began to ring. "You people!" The code was cracked. This wasn't a traffic stop. It was a power play. "I am unbuckling my seatbelt," she narrated her movements, a survival tactic she had taught her own son. "I'm opening the door." She stepped out into the oppressive heat. She stood 5'9", but her posture made her look 6 feet tall. She looked Officer Pike directly in the eyes. "Turn around. Hands on the hood. Spread your legs," Pike commanded. "Officer, this is unnecessary. I am a lieutenant general in the United States Army. My identification is in the vehicle. If you check it, I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You swerved. You look intoxicated. And I suspect you of carrying stolen government property." "Stolen property?" Thalia asked, her brow furrowing. "That uniform. Stolen valor is a crime in this state, lady. And driving a car like this on a government salary. Yeah, right. Who's the dealer? Who do you work for? Thalia felt a cold rage settle in her stomach. It was a familiar feeling, one she usually reserved for incompetent contractors or insubordinate majors. But here, on the side of a dusty road, with a man barely old enough to shave holding a gun to her hip, it was dangerous. My name is Dr. Thalia Monroe. I am the Deputy Commanding General of— Shut up! Pike shoved her. The force was sudden. Thalia stumbled forward, her hip colliding with the hot metal of the Mustang. You are making a mistake, she said, her voice dropping an octave. It was the voice she used before firing people. The only mistake was you driving through my town, Pike spat. He grabbed her left wrist and twisted it behind her back, forcing the cuff on with a painful click. At that moment, a second cruiser kicked up dust as it screeched to a halt behind them. Sergeant Brock Cowboy Tanner stepped out. He was older, heavy-set, chewing on a toothpick, wearing sunglasses that cost $5 at a gas station. What we got, Pike? Tanner called out, hitching his belt up. Resisting arrest, Sarge. Possible DUI and definitely stolen valor. Caught her with a general's uniform in the back. Says she's a doctor. Tanner laughed, a wet hacking sound. He walked over, looking Thalia up and down as she stood handcuffed against her own car. A general, huh? Tanner smirked, leaning in close enough for Thalia to smell the stale tobacco on his breath. You know my daddy was in Nam. I know what a general looks like. And sweetheart, you ain't it. Thalia felt the metal of the handcuffs digging into her radial nerve. She didn't flinch. She entered a state of operational detachment, the same mindset she had used during the Baghdad extraction coordination years earlier. Sergeant, Thalia said, shifting her gaze to Tanner, I strongly suggest you check my wallet on the passenger seat. Inside is a common access card. It will verify my rank and clearance level. If you continue this detainment without verification, you are violating federal protocols regarding the detention of senior military officers. Tanner picked his teeth with the toothpick. You hear that, Pike? She speaks fancy protocols. She was reaching for something, Sarge, Pike lied effortlessly. I feared for my safety. Check the car, Pike. Tear it apart. Let's see what she's really hiding. You do not have consent to search my vehicle, Thalia stated firmly. I do not consent. Probable cause, lady, Tanner said, tapping the hood. We smell marijuana. There was no marijuana. The car smelled of new leather and Thalia's Chanel No. 5. Thalia watched helplessly as Pike dove into her car. He threw her purse onto the asphalt, spilling its contents. Her lipstick, her phone, and her wallet tumbled into the dirt. He ripped the glove box open, tossing the owner's manual over his shoulder. Then he grabbed the uniform. Thalia's heart skipped a beat. That uniform was prepared for the Pentagon. It was immaculate. Pike pulled it off the hanger, bunching the fabric in his fist. He threw it on the dusty trunk of the Charger. Hey, Thalia snapped, breaking her composure for the first time. That is a United States Army uniform. Treat it with respect. It's a prop, Pike muttered. He dug into the pockets of the uniform jacket, looking for drugs. This is insane, Thalia said. Look at the wallet in the dirt. Pick it up. Tanner sighed, acting as if it were a great burden. He bent down and scooped up the leather wallet. He flipped it open. He froze. The ID wasn't a standard driver's license. It was a vertically oriented Department of Defense Common Access card with a gold chip. Below the photo of a stern-faced Thalia, it read, Monroe Thalia. Rank, Lieutenant General. Pay grade 09. Behind it was another card, a diplomatic passport. Tanner squinted at the card, then at Thalia. The sun glared off the 3 stars on the ID photo. It's a good fake, Tanner said, but his voice lacked the earlier conviction. He looked at Pike. Looks real technical. I can print that at Kinko's. Sarge, I'm telling you, she's a runner, Pike called out from the back seat of the Mustang. Probably moving product for the cartels. They use women like this to fly under the radar. Check the plates again, Tanner ordered. I did. No record. Because it's a government vehicle masked for security, you idiots, Thalia hissed. It is registered to the Department of the Army. Tanner looked at the card again. He felt a prickle of doubt, a cold sweat starting on the back of his neck. But in Oak Creek, you didn't back down. If you backed down, you admitted you were wrong. And if you admitted you were wrong to a black woman driving a Shelby, the boys at the station would never let you live it down. He had to double down. "Fake ID," Tanner declared, shoving the wallet into his own pocket. "That's a felony, forging government documents." He grabbed Thalia's arm, spinning her around roughly. "You're under arrest, Pike. Get her in the back. We'll sort this out at the station." "I demand a phone call," Thalia said, struggling against the grip. "I need to contact my chain of command." "You can make a call when we book you," Pike said, grabbing her other arm and dragging her toward the Charger. "You are making a catastrophic error," Thalia said, her voice turning icy cold. "Officer Pike, Sergeant Tanner, I am memorizing your names. I'm memorizing your badge numbers. And I promise you by sunset you will wish you had never been born." Pike laughed. He actually laughed. "Get in the car, lady." He shoved her into the back of the Dodge Charger. The plastic seat was hard and hot. The cage separated her from the air conditioning. It smelled of vomit and disinfectant. As Pike slammed the door, Thalia saw something out of the corner of her eye. About 50 yards away, near the entrance to a gas station, a young woman with pink hair was holding up a smartphone. She was recording. Thalia took a deep breath. Good, she thought. The world is watching. Pike got into the driver's seat. Tanner got into the passenger side. "What do we do with the Mustang?" Pike asked. "Tow it," Tanner said. "Impound. Tell Jimmy to take his time logging it. If she is a runner, we might find cash in the panels." Thalia sat in the back, her wrists throbbing. She closed her eyes and began to count. She needed to remain calm. She needed to think. She needed a phone. They drove in silence, the radio crackling occasionally with dispatch chatter. Thalia didn't speak. She was formulating a strategy. This was no longer a traffic stop. It was a hostage situation. When they arrived at the Oak Creek police station, a brick building that looked like a fortified bunker, Pike hauled her out. He paraded her through the front desk area. The desk sergeant, a woman named Iris who had been there for 30 years, looked up over her glasses. "What you got, cowboy?" "Identity theft, stolen valor, maybe drug trafficking," Tanner said loudly, puffing his chest out. Iris looked at Thalia. She looked at the tailored clothes, the expensive haircut, the way Thalia held her head high despite the handcuffs. Iris frowned. She had seen drug runners. She had seen criminals. This woman looked like authority. "Book her," Tanner said. "Put her in holding cell 2, the hot one." "I want my phone call," Thalia demanded. "Now, processing first," Pike said, pushing her toward the booking desk. They took her fingerprints. They took her mugshot. Thalia stared into the camera lens with a look that would later be described by the media as the gaze of judgment. Finally, after deliberate stalling, they led her to a cell. They uncuffed her. "Phone," Thalia said, extending her hand. Tanner rolled his eyes. He motioned to a payphone on the wall of the booking room. "Local calls only. You got 3 minutes." Thalia didn't move toward the payphone. "I need my cell phone. It has secure contacts." "No cell phones in this holding area," Pike said. "Then dial the number I give you," Thalia said. "It is a Washington, D.C. area code." "I told you local calls only," Tanner said, getting impatient. Thalia stepped close to the bars. "Sergeant, listen to me very carefully. If you do not let me make this call, the military police will not just come for me. They will come for this entire building. I'm due for a briefing with General Everett Shaw, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If I am not there, and if I do not check in, they will ping my phone. They will find it here, and they will assume I have been kidnapped by hostiles." Tanner stared at her. The specific name drop, General Shaw, landed. Everyone knew that name. "You're bluffing," Pike scoffed. "Give her the damn phone," Iris said from the desk. She stood up. "I don't like this, Brock. She ain't acting like a junkie." Tanner hesitated. He looked at the ID card still in his hand. "Lieutenant General." "Fine," Tanner grunted. He walked over to the property bag, pulled out her sleek black government-issued smartphone, and handed it to her through the bars. "One call. Put it on speaker. No funny business." Thalia took the phone. Her hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but her fingers were precise. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call her husband. She dialed a speed dial number. *7 Alpha. The phone rang once. Pentagon Secure Switchboard. Identify. Priority 1 Alpha. Lieutenant General Thalia Monroe. Authentication code Zulu X-ray 94. Patch me through to the chairman's office. Immediate. Tanner's jaw went slack. Pike stopped chewing his gum. Authentication confirmed. General Monroe, stand by for the chairman. There was a click, a brief hum of static, and then a gruff, familiar voice filled the small police station booking room. Thalia, I'm staring at an empty chair. Where the hell are you? The briefing started minutes ago. Thalia looked directly at Sergeant Tanner, her eyes burning with vindication. General Shaw, she said, her voice clear and loud. I am currently being held against my will by the Oak Creek Police Department in Georgia. I have been assaulted, handcuffed, and accused of stolen valor by Officer Harlan Pike and Sergeant Brock Tanner. They have seized my vehicle and my service uniform. I am requesting immediate federal intervention. There was a silence on the line so profound, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Then the voice on the other end dropped to a dangerous whisper. Say that again, Thalia. I'm in a cage, sir, in Oak Creek, Georgia. Stay on the line, the chairman said. Do not hang up. Then they heard the chairman shouting to someone in the background. Get me the JSOC commander. Get me the FBI director and get the governor of Georgia on the line now. Tanner's face turned the color of ash. He looked at the phone, then at Thalia, then at Pike. Oh no, Pike whispered. The silence in the booking room was suffocating. It was broken only by the heavy, erratic breathing of Sergeant Tanner. On the speakerphone, the line to the Pentagon was still open, but the chaotic shouting had been replaced by a rhythmic, terrifying sound, the clatter of keyboards. Someone on the other end was logging coordinates with lethal precision. Ma'am, Tanner started, his voice trembling, the toothpick falling from his mouth. General, if this is a misunderstanding, we can— Quiet, Thalia commanded. She didn't even look at him. She stared at the analog clock on the wall, watching the second hand sweep past the 12. Suddenly, the phone crackled. Thalia, this is Colonel Lena from the Judge Advocate General's Corps. I'm patching in the Provost Marshal. We have your location. Are you injured? Minor bruising on the wrists and hip. Nothing broken, Colonel, Thalia replied, her voice steady as a surgeon's hand. But my dignity is currently in a holding cell. Understood. ETA for the advance team is imminent. Fort Stewart has scrambled a reaction force. The FBI field office in Atlanta is airborne. General, the chairman has ordered a full lockdown of that facility. Do not let them touch you again. Copy that. Tanner looked at Pike. The young officer looked like he was going to vomit. Sarge, what do we do? Reaction force? Is he talking about the Army? Shut up, Pike, Tanner hissed. He looked at the desk sergeant, Iris. She was already on the landline, her face the color of ash. Chief, Iris whispered into the receiver. You need to get down here now. No, I can't explain. I think the Army is invading us. Moments passed. It felt like an eternity. Then the stale coffee in the mug on Iris's desk began to ripple. A low thrumming sound began to vibrate the windows. It grew louder. A deep, chest-thumping whoop, whoop, whoop that shook the dust from the acoustic ceiling tiles. The fluorescent lights flickered. What is that? Pike asked, backing away from the door, his hand hovering uselessly over his gun. Thalia smiled, a cold, shark-like smile. That, Officer Pike, is the sound of consequences. Outside, the sleepy town of Oak Creek was waking up to a nightmare. 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters painted in matte black roared over the main street, flying so low that shingles rattled on the roofs of the antique shops. They hovered directly over the police station parking lot, kicking up a blinding storm of sand, gravel, and regret. Simultaneously, a convoy of 4 black Chevy Suburbans with government plates screeched around the corner, jumping the curb to flank the entrance. They didn't park. They established a kill box. The front door of the station burst open with a crash that shattered the glass. It wasn't the chief of police. It was a team of 6 men in full tactical gear, wearing vests emblazoned with FBI and MP. They moved with a fluidity and violence of action that made Officer Pike's earlier swagger look like a child playing dress-up. Federal agents! Hands where we can see them now! Pike and Tanner threw their hands up so fast, Pike nearly dislocated his shoulder. Don't shoot! Tanner screamed, his voice cracking. We're police! We're police! On your knees. Face the wall. The lead agent, a giant of a man, didn't hesitate. He kicked Pike's legs apart, forcing him down to the linoleum. Behind the tactical team walked a man in a pristine Army service uniform, the green stripes on his sleeves indicating a command sergeant major. He was followed by a woman in a sharp gray suit carrying a briefcase. The sergeant major scanned the room, ignoring the cowering police officers, his eyes locked onto the holding cell. He saw the 3 stars on the ID card lying on the booking desk. He saw Thalia standing behind the bars. He marched over, his face a mask of controlled fury. Unlock this door, he barked at Iris. Iris, shaking so hard she dropped the keys twice, finally managed to unlock the cell. The clang of the door opening was the sweetest sound Thalia had ever heard. Thalia stepped out. She rubbed her wrists where the red marks of the cuffs were starting to bruise. The sergeant major snapped to attention and rendered a salute so crisp it cut the air. General Monroe, Command Sergeant Major Ronan Vale, 3rd Infantry Division. Ma'am, on behalf of the Army, I apologize. Thalia returned the salute slowly. At ease, Sergeant Major. It's good to see you. Are these the men? Vale asked, turning slowly to look at Tanner and Pike, who were currently kneeling on the floor with FBI agents, zip-tying their hands behind their backs. Those are the men, Thalia confirmed. Officer Pike assaulted me. Sergeant Tanner supervised the violation of my civil rights and destroyed the chain of custody for classified materials. The woman in the gray suit stepped forward. General, I am Special Agent Mara Quill, FBI Public Corruption Unit. We've been authorized by the DOJ to take jurisdiction over this scene. We are seizing all surveillance footage, body cam data, and physical logs. Just then, the back door burst open, and a fat, balding man in a rumpled shirt ran in. It was Chief of Police Leland Crow. What the hell is going on here? Crow shouted, red-faced. You can't just storm my station. This is Oak Creek. I want to see a warrant. Special Agent Quill turned to him, holding up a piece of paper stamped with the seal of a federal judge. Warrant signed minutes ago by the district court in Atlanta. Chief, we are investigating a conspiracy to deprive a federal officer of their rights, kidnapping, and potential racketeering. And given what we know about Route 9 speed traps, I suggest you shut your mouth before you add obstruction of justice to the list. Crow froze. He looked at Thalia. He saw the stars. He looked at the Blackhawks hovering outside the window. You arrested a general, Crow whispered to Tanner, his voice barely audible. You morons arrested a 3-star general. She looked like a drug dealer, Chief, Pike blubbered from the floor. Thalia walked over to Pike. She stood over him, looking down with eyes that had seen war zones. Officer Pike, she said softly, you said I looked like a drug dealer. You said my uniform was a costume. You said I couldn't possibly afford my car. She leaned in close. That car was a gift from my husband for our 25th anniversary. He died in Afghanistan 2 years ago. He was a general, too. And that uniform, I wore it to his funeral. You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected every soldier who ever wore the cloth. Pike couldn't meet her eyes. He stared at the floor, tears streaming down his face. Get them out of my sight, Thalia said, turning away. While the FBI was tearing the police station apart, searching for the lost body cam footage that Tanner had tried to delete moments before the breach, a different kind of war was breaking out online. The girl with the pink hair at the gas station, her name was Skylar, and she was a streamer with a large following on social media, had uploaded the video of the arrest with the caption, "Small-town cops assault Black Army general. This is insane." By the time Thalia was escorted out of the station and into the back of a waiting Suburban, the video had 4 million views. It had reached major social media platforms. It had reached CNN. It had reached the White House press secretary's desk. The video clearly showed Thalia complying. It showed Pike shoving her against the hot hood of the Mustang. It showed the uniform being thrown onto the trunk like a dirty rag. As Thalia sat in the air-conditioned SUV, a medic checking her vitals, her phone buzzed. It was her son, Julian, a corporate lawyer in New York. Mom, are you okay? I just saw it. I'm looking at the video right now. Mom, I'm going to fly down there and sue them until the town ceases to exist. I'm fine, Julian. The situation is handled. Mom, #FirePike is trending #1 globally. People are digging up this guy's past. Did you know he was fired from a mall security job for excessive force? And Tanner. The internet found his social media. It's not good, Mom. He's got posts bragging about taxing out-of-towners. Thalia sighed, rubbing her temple. I need to get to D.C., Julian. I have a job to do. You're not going to D.C. yet, Julian said. I just got off the phone with your aide. The chairman wants a press conference. He wants to use this. They want to make an example out of Oak Creek. Thalia looked out the window. Outside the police station, a crowd was forming. Locals who had seen the helicopters had gathered. But as news of the video spread, the mood of the crowd shifted. They weren't there to support the police. They were there to witness their downfall. For years, the people of Oak Creek had been harassed by Pike and Tanner. They had paid the bogus tickets. They had been intimidated. Now, seeing the feds dragging computers out of the station, they sensed blood in the water. Special Agent Quill opened the car door. General, we found something you need to see in Pike's locker. Thalia stepped out. Quill held up an evidence bag. Inside were jewelry, expensive watches, and rolls of cash. Trophies, Quill said grimly. From other stops. It looks like they've been robbing tourists for years, pocketing the cash, planting drugs if they complained. You weren't a random stop, General. You were just the first one who fought back. Thalia felt a wave of nausea. How many? We don't know yet, but Chief Crow's safe has a ledger. It looks like the whole department was running a roadside piracy ring. Just then, a sleek black sedan pulled up. A man in a sharp suit stepped out. The governor of Georgia. He looked terrified. He beelined for Thalia, bypassing the chief entirely. General Monroe, the governor stammered, offering a hand that Thalia ignored. I am mortified. This is not who we are. I've already suspended the chief and ordered a state inquiry. Thalia looked at the governor, then at the camera crews setting up behind the yellow police tape. Governor, she said, her voice loud enough for the reporters to hear. You allowed this. These men didn't operate in a vacuum. They had badges you issued. They used a court system you oversee. Do not apologize to me. Apologize to the citizens of this town who have been living under a gang with badges. She turned to Agent Quill. I want my car back and I want my uniform cleaned. Your car is being retrieved from the impound now, General. We're having it detailed, and I believe the Sergeant Major has already sent your uniform to the base cleaners for an emergency press. Good, Thalia said. Then I'm ready to make a statement. She walked toward the cluster of microphones. The crowd went silent. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a conqueror. She adjusted her cuffs, though she wasn't wearing the uniform yet. The phantom weight of the handcuffs was still there, fueling her. My name is Lieutenant General Thalia Monroe, she began, looking directly into the camera lens. Today I was reminded that for some, a badge is a license to hate, but I'm here to remind those people of something else. She paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the humid air. The oath I swore to the Constitution includes enemies, foreign and domestic, and today I met the domestic kind. The interrogation room at the FBI field office in Atlanta was starkly different from the one in Oak Creek. There were no stained coffee cups, no flickering lights, and definitely no good old boy camaraderie. The walls were soundproofed acoustic foam. The table was bolted to the floor, and the air was recycled and cold. Sergeant Brock Cowboy Tanner sat on one side of the metal table. He wasn't wearing his sunglasses anymore. He wasn't chewing a toothpick. He looked smaller, deflated, like a balloon that had lost its air. Across from him sat Special Agent Quill and a formidable man named Colonel Lena from the Army's Criminal Investigation Division. I want a deal, Tanner said, his voice raspy. I know how this works. I give you the big fish. You let the little fish swim. Agent Quill didn't blink. She opened a thick file folder and slid a photo across the table. It was a picture of the blue ledger they had pulled from Chief Crow's safe. We don't need you to give us the big fish, Brock, Quill said. her voice dangerously calm. "We already have the ledger. We have the dates, the amounts, and the initials of every officer who took a cut of the seized cash. We know about the tourist tax. We know about the planted evidence in past cases. We know everything." Tanner's face went pale. "Then what do you want?" "We want the narrative," Colonel Lena interjected. "We want to know why you thought you could target a 3-star general. Was she targeted specifically, or are you just that incompetent?" Tanner looked down at his hands. "It wasn't. We didn't know who she was. Pike is an idiot. He saw the car. We have a profile." "Okay, expensive cars, out-of-state plates, solo drivers. Usually they pay the fine and leave. They don't fight back."
"And the uniform," Lena pressed. "You saw the stars. You saw the ID."
"I thought it was fake," Tanner snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. "You don't understand. In Oak Creek, the law is what we say it is. We didn't think anyone would come for her. We didn't think the Army would send helicopters. That is the arrogance that ends careers. You didn't just break the law, Sergeant. You threatened national security," Lena said. "General Monroe was carrying classified logistical data for the Eastern Seaboard Defense Grid. By seizing her vehicle and her person, you technically committed an act of domestic terrorism." Tanner choked. "Terrorism? I'm a cop." "You were a gang member with a badge," Quill corrected. "And right now you're looking at 20 years for deprivation of rights under color of law, plus another 10 for the racketeering charges we are filing against the department. Unless," Tanner looked up, desperate hope in his eyes. "Unless what?" "Unless you testify against Chief Crow, and unless you admit on record that Harlan Pike falsified the police report regarding the general's resistance." "I'll do it," Tanner said instantly. "Pike is a loose cannon. I told him to cool it. I'll give you everything." Meanwhile, in the adjacent interrogation room, Officer Harlan Pike was weeping. He wasn't negotiating. He was disintegrating.
"I just wanted to be a good cop,"
Pike sobbed.
"The chief, he said if I didn't get my seizure numbers up, I'd be back on mall security. I needed the seizures. The Mustang looked like a jackpot."
General Thalia Monroe watched the interrogation from behind the one-way mirror. She stood with her arms crossed, her face unreadable.
"Pathetic,"
she whispered. Standing next to her was her son, Julian, who had flown in from New York. He looked at his mother.
"They're just bullies, Mom. Take away the badge and there's nothing left."
"There is something left," Thalia said, turning to walk away. "The damage they caused. We need to make sure they can never do this again. Not to a general and not to a janitor." The investigation didn't stop at the police station. The FBI raided the home of the local judge who had been signing the bogus warrants for the asset forfeitures. They found a safety deposit box key hidden in a hollowed-out Bible. The corruption went all the way to the county courthouse. For weeks, Oak Creek was under siege, not by the military, but by auditors. Every ticket written in the last several years was reviewed. Every arrest was scrutinized. The Blue Ledger revealed that the department had stolen millions from motorists over a decade. They had ruined lives, confiscated college funds, and seized cars that were never returned. And it all ended because they stopped the wrong black woman on a quiet afternoon. The trial of United States versus Pike, Tanner, and Crow was held in the Federal District Court in Atlanta to avoid jury bias. The courtroom was packed. National media outlets were camped outside. The courtroom sketches would feature Thalia's sharp profile. Again and again, Thalia chose to wear her dress blues for her testimony. She wore her ribbon rack, a colorful testament to 30 years of service. Bronze stars, legions of merit, campaign medals from the desert to the mountains. When she walked to the witness stand, the room went silent. The contrast was stark. The impeccably disciplined general versus the 3 disheveled former officers sitting at the defense table in orange jumpsuits. The defense attorney for Chief Crow, a slick lawyer named Silas Thorne, tried the only tactic he had, character assassination. "General Monroe," Thorne said, pacing in front of the jury, "you stated that Officer Pike was aggressive. But isn't it true that you were speeding?" "I was traveling at the posted limit, Counselor," Thalia said, her voice projecting to the back of the room without a microphone. "My vehicle has a GPS data logger installed by the Department of Defense. The logs have been submitted into evidence. I was not speeding. Thorne frowned. He hadn't read the technical specs of the evidence. He pivoted. You admit you were frustrated. You are a powerful woman. You're used to getting your way. Isn't it possible that you escalated the situation? That you used your rank to intimidate these simple country officers? Thalia turned her head slowly to look at the jury. Then she looked back at Thorne. Counselor, I have negotiated with warlords in Kandahar. I have briefed the President of the United States in the Situation Room. I do not need to intimidate a traffic officer to feel powerful. I offered my identification. I narrated my movements. I followed every protocol designed to keep black citizens alive during traffic stops. The escalation came entirely from the men sitting at that table. But, and let me be clear, Thalia continued, her voice gaining a steely edge, I did not use my rank to escape a ticket. I used my rank to survive an assault. If I had been a civilian woman with no connections, no star on my shoulder, and no tracking device in my car, would we be here today? Or would I be just another resisting arrest statistic in Sergeant Tanner's ledger? Objection! Came from the defense table, but it didn't matter. The jury had heard it. The truth hung in the air like smoke. The most damning evidence, however, wasn't the testimony. It was the recovered audio from Officer Pike's body cam. Tanner had tried to delete the video, but he didn't know that the new body cams had a pre-record buffer and a backup drive. The FBI forensic team had recovered it all. The prosecutor played the clip for the court. Audio crackle. Pike, is that a costume back there? Pike, you people always have an excuse. The sound of the slam against the hood. Tanner, I know what a general looks like. And sweetheart, you ain't it. The jury flinched at the sound of the impact. They looked at Thalia, sitting tall and dignified. Then they looked at Tanner, who was staring at the table, his face a mask of shame. The real-life twist came during the sentencing phase. Harlan Pike, the young officer who started it all, broke protocol again. Before the judge could read the sentence, Pike stood up. Sit down, his lawyer hissed. No, Pike said, his voice shaking. He turned to Thalia in the gallery. General, I was scared. Not of you. Of them. He pointed at Tanner and Crow. They told me if I didn't bring in a seizure that day, they'd fire me. I have a baby daughter. I wanted to keep my job. I'm sorry. It was a moment of pathetic human weakness. It didn't excuse what he did, but it exposed the rot of the system. Judge Lorraine Beck, a stern woman known for harsh sentences, looked over her glasses. Mr. Pike, fear for your job is not a license to violate the Constitution. You swore an oath to the law, not to your payroll. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. The sentences: Chief Leland Crow, 25 years in federal prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and wire fraud. Sergeant Brock Cowboy Tanner, 18 years for deprivation of rights and destruction of evidence. Officer Harlan Pike, 8 years. The judge showed slight leniency due to his cooperation and confession, but the message was clear. Just following orders is not a defense. As the bailiffs led the men away, the clinking of their shackles echoed in the courtroom. It was the same sound Thalia had heard that day on the roadside. But now the rhythm was different. It was the rhythm of justice. Thalia walked out of the courthouse and into a sea of cameras. General, do you feel vindicated? A reporter shouted. Thalia stopped. She looked at the cameras. Vindication is personal, she said. This isn't about me. This is about the fact that it took the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to stop a bad traffic stop. That is not a victory. That is a warning. We have work to do. She walked to her car, the Shelby GT 500, now fully detailed and gleaming. She got in, put on her sunglasses, and drove away. But the story didn't end in the courtroom. The hard karma continued. In the months that followed, the state of Georgia passed the Monroe Act, a piece of legislation that mandated independent oversight for all asset forfeiture funds and required body cams to be live-streamed to a cloud server that officers couldn't delete. The Oak Creek Police Department was dissolved entirely. Policing duties for the town were handed over to the county sheriff, who hired a diverse force and implemented community policing standards. And Thalia, she didn't retire. She was promoted. Months after the trial, she received her 4th star. General Thalia Monroe became the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, with a new portfolio added to her duties, the Office of Institutional Integrity. She was now the one rewriting the rules. Months after the raid that shook the nation, the landscape of Oak Creek had changed both physically and spiritually. The speed trap billboards on Route 9, once the primary source of revenue for the town, were gone. In their place stood simple signs welcoming visitors to a new beginning. The fortified police station had been gutted and repurposed into a community legal aid clinic and a library, funded entirely by the assets seized from the corrupt department. But for General Thalia Monroe, the story wasn't quite finished. There was one loose end she needed to tie, not with a rope, but with a conversation. She drove the cherry red Shelby GT 500 down Route 9 again. The engine purred. 428 cubic inches of American muscle that had been fully restored by the FBI forensics team before being returned to her. She wasn't rushing this time. She was cruising. She pulled onto the same gravel shoulder where Officer Harlan Pike had slammed her against the hood. The dust was settled now. The ghosts of the confrontation were fading, replaced by the hum of cicadas in the pines. She got out of the car and walked to the edge of the road near the tree line. She was meeting someone. A beat-up, rusted pickup truck pulled up slowly. A man in his 60s stepped out. He wore a faded flannel shirt, work boots covered in red clay, and a baseball cap that he immediately took off. He looked tired, worn down by a shame that wasn't entirely his own. It was Gary Pike, Harlan Pike's father. He approached Thalia slowly, holding his hat in his hands, his eyes fixed on the asphalt. He looked like a man who had aged years and months. "General," Gary said, his voice raspy and thick with emotion. "I didn't think you'd come." "You asked to see me, Mr. Pike," Thalia said, keeping a respectful but guarded distance. "I make it a point to answer calls." Gary looked up, his eyes rimmed with red. I wanted to apologize to your face for my boy. I raised him better than that. Or I thought I did. I was a Marine, General. See, Vietnam, 71. I taught him to respect the uniform. I don't know where he went wrong." Thalia looked at the father's pained face. She saw the tragedy that often gets lost in the headlines. Corruption didn't just destroy the victims, it destroyed the families of the perpetrators too. Harlan Pike destroyed his own life, but he broke his father's heart. "He got caught up in a rotten system, Gary," Thalia said gently. "Bad systems corrupt good people. Your son made choices, terrible, cowardly choices, and he is paying for them now." Harlan Pike was currently serving his sentence in a federal penitentiary. "I visit him," Gary said, a tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. He's different, scared. He reads a lot now. He asked me to give you this." Gary reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded, crinkled piece of notebook paper. Thalia took it. She unfolded the sheet. It was a drawing, a crude pencil sketch of a 1967 Shelby Mustang, and underneath, in shaky block handwriting, "I'm sorry. You were right. It wasn't a costume." Thalia stared at the note. It wasn't forgiveness. That was too big a word for this situation. But it was acknowledgement. It was a surrender. "Tell him I received it," Thalia said, refolding the paper and placing it in her pocket. "And tell him that when he gets out, the world will be different. He will have to earn his place in it. But it's not impossible." Gary nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you, General. You didn't have to meet me. Most folks would have spit on me. I am a soldier, Mr. Pike. We don't spit on the wounded. We treat them." Thalia turned and walked back to her car. She slid into the driver's seat, the leather warm against her back. As she put the car in gear, her mind drifted to the final tally of justice, the hard karma that the media loved to talk about. The aftermath. Chief Leland Crow sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and wire fraud. He would likely die behind bars. Sergeant Brock Cowboy Tanner, 18 years for deprivation of rights and destruction of evidence. His wife divorced him the day of the sentencing. Judge Silas Prescott, the corrupt judge who signed the warrants, was exposed by the Blue Ledger. He was disbarred and sentenced to 12 years for judicial misconduct and money laundering. The Victim Fund, The millions recovered from the scheme were returned to the victims. Families got their cars back. College funds were restored. And Thalia? She did not retire. The ordeal hadn't broken her. It had sharpened her. Months after the trial, she stood in the Oval Office. The President of the United States pinned a 4th star on her shoulder. General Thalia Monroe was named Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, with a new special portfolio added to her duties, the Office of Institutional Integrity. She was now the one rewriting the rules. She checked her mirrors. The road ahead was clear. No traps. No flashing lights in the rear view. Just the open highway and the promise of the future. She punched the accelerator. The Mustang roared, tires biting the asphalt, launching her forward. She wasn't running from anything anymore. She was driving toward everything. General Thalia Monroe drove on, a guardian of the road, leaving the dust of Oak Creek in her rearview mirror forever. And that is how one traffic stop dismantled an entire corrupt empire. General Monroe proved that true power isn't about the badge on your chest or the gun on your hip. It's about integrity, composure, and the unshakable will to stand your ground. Officer Pike and Sergeant Tanner thought they were hunting a rabbit, but they woke up a lioness. They tried to break her, but all they did was break themselves against her resolve. If this story fired you up, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells YouTube you want more stories like this. Share this video with someone who needs to see justice served cold. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story of karma hitting back hard. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.